Okay, good morning, everybody. It's 8:30. It's time to call the meeting of Tuesday, August 26th to order. And our first item is to approve the agenda.
I'll move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We move on to citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens to be heard today on items not on the agenda? Any citizens to be heard? Final call. All right, move on. Approval of bills and vouchers.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to pay the bills. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Our 8:35 item is Strive for Excellence Committee report. And we have committee members, I don't see Rhonda here, Mark Sloan is here, Kathy McKay is here, Dave Overbo is here, and Darren Brook is here. So, come on up. And it looks like you've got, what, 6 items you want to talk to us about.
Well, what we're going to talk about is back in 2006, this board sent us out to learn more and to look more at how we can make Clay County a better place to work for our employees and a lot of things like that. So we went to training for a year through the AMC, and we came back and we generated something called the Strive for Excellence program, and this board basically appointed us to take the lead on that and to go through and do a lot of things. So we've done a lot over the years. I mean, there's been a lot of different pieces we've put into play. One of the single biggest is the Employee Appreciation Committee, who I think has been a very successful program. What we're at now is, after all these years, we're trying to look at how to go. What's the next step? Where does Strive for Excellence go? And what we've decided to do.
Can you speak into your mic a little bit more?
Oh, sorry. What we've decided to do is to expand the Strive for Excellence Committee. So instead of just us, we'd like to make it the whole management committee take on that Strive for Excellence role. So the reason we're actually here in front of you is since our committee was formed by the county board, we have to come back to you to say we'd like you to basically change it, transform it, that role, and pass it on to the management committee. And those 6 bullets, what we got on there is really talks about that. Basically, we're talking about an effective date of October 1st. We expand to become the whole management committee will take over the role, and instead of having separate meetings, we'll just roll it into an agenda item on that management committee each month. The EAC will exist as it does now, only they'll report to the management committee instead of to us. And the vice chair of the management committee will become the liaison. And then over time, as we look at specific things we'd like to work on, we can always create an ad hoc committee out of the management to focus on a specific task or those kind of things. To make this all work, our Employee Appreciation Committee actually has a set of bylaws that were adopted several years ago. We've gone through and revamped all of those so that they take into account these changes. We've taken this to the Management Committee back in August and talked to them about it, and they thought it was a good idea. So that leads us here to you today to say we'd like to take this to the next step.
Okay. Comments, questions?
Yeah, it sounds good. It sounds workable and efficient. I guess I'm curious as to, Brian, if you think it's a good move with the committee, with the management committee.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Everett. We did talk about this. In fact, I think we were in dialogue for probably 6 months over this, of what goals and what Strive should be doing and things, and we kind of came up with this together, that let's get more people involved, more ideas. I think our structured management team has been pretty effective. We have training every month on it, and this is part of the agenda, and I think it'll go well. I think it'll endorse some of the other managers too that were not included necessarily before, and I think that's what we want to be, is more inclusive of every one of it and get everybody's buy-in. So that was kind of the idea.
So by going to the rolling this over to the management committee, who do we have that's outside of management that's going to partake in this process? Do we have anybody?
Well, the whole EAC is mostly non-management. So And then the liaison would be the management committee's co-chair for the year, so that would rotate. Right now, we have a Strive member that is the liaison with the EAC now, and that rotates every year as well. So instead of having the liaison from the Strive, it would be the vice chair of the management committee would interact with the EAC. Because the EAC really has a set thing where they do something every quarter or so, whether it's smoothies or breakfast or donuts or the barbecue in the summertime, and when they meet, they specifically set out what they're going to do as their next event. So they're very structured, and I think by having that representation from the management meeting there as well, you're getting a good flavor of both management and the employees as well.
And Mr. Chair, just an observation on that. All of the members of the Strive Committee are on the management team right now. In fact, it had kind of morphed towards that with Michelle being appointed a judge. She left the committee. Bonnie has retired, and that was what kind of started the conversation about that. We did discuss what you just asked, which I think is a very good observation, more of a labor management committee to discuss.
Well, I
things.
just thought, if you're going to strive for excellence and find ways for better atmosphere for working, and it would seem to me you'd want a mix of the workers along with management to because if you have just all management there, you're really getting the input from from the workers out in the field, and I guess that
was discussed. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the other intent is that, like this last bullet here, ad hoc subcommittees could create from the management committee, could always include some employees as well. Like if we have a issue that we think we want to look into a little bit further, getting some of the management and maybe some of the employees to work on that project and come up with some solutions. So I think those ad hocs could also include employees as well.
Well, I would certainly encourage it. I think it would be healthy for.
Is this going to be much different than a labor management committee, or is this committee any different? Or, I mean, on labor management, you deal with stuff too, don't you? Or
right now, we don't have an official labor management committee. I know some counties do, but we don't have an official labor management committee. A lot of our committees, like our insurance committee that we're going to have here in the meeting next, right after this, has both labor and management involved. So some of those committees do have representation, but
And wouldn't you say that's worked very well?
I think so. It's worked very well.
well,
Yeah.
I would say this would be a good thing then. Yeah.
Right. Any other comments?
How many people are on the whole management committee? How many will there be then?
Oh, let me say 18 to 20. Depends upon who you include.
So it should be real easy to make decisions then. It always helps when you have go from like 5 to 20 then. So good luck with that.
That's why we all have a boss that sits over there.
All right, what's the board's wishes? You're asking us to just approve the change in the structure of the.
I would move that we accept the proposed changes and ask them to implement them.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Did we have any of you others wanted to say anything on this? Rhonda or Dave or?
Well, I think it's our plan forward is going to work out real well. It's a little ad hoc subcommittees, I think, will work well. It'll be just like little mini strives, I guess, for the most part. And it'll get a different view from a lot of different people. We've been on this committee for several years trying to put out different surveys and different things to excite employees and to provide better customer service and things. And I think, having a little different twist and different people on there from year to year will work out pretty good.
I'm glad you haven't forgot about the providing customer service, because that was part of your charge in the beginning, was to improve that relations with.
In fact, that's our statement at the bottom, our vision statement we've always had.
That's very good. All right. With no other comments, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, there you go.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, our next item is request to replace social work position in Child Protection Child Welfare Service Unit. Rhonda, you're right back up here.
Thank you, and I apologize for running a little late this morning. Okay, we had, and I provided some information in the board packet, but we had a resignation last week. One of our social workers in our Child Protection Child Welfare Unit, I think she's been with us a little under a year. She's going to be taking a position in Hubbard County, closer to her family, so understandable move. But we're losing a good worker that we need to replace. And I did indicate in the board information, this is a position that does generate some revenue depending on the caseload and the clients that are served, but the history of revenue has been a little over $9,000 a quarter, and we would anticipate that revenue to be similar with the new employee. She's leaving on in between step 3 and 4, and so we would anticipate hiring somebody on the same grade, starting at that 1 and 2 step.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you, Rhonda.
Right. Thank you.
All right, Dave, do you want to come up here a little bit early, but approval to replace unit number 120 tandem axle plow truck. And this is, yeah, I'll let you start, and then we'll talk about what we discussed in our highway tracking meeting.
Sure.
Go ahead, Dave.
We started looking at our, for the winter plow season, how we're going to handle things, and we ended up selling one of our part-time or our used plow trucks this past spring to the landfill. It had some issues where it didn't really meet our needs anymore out on the road, but it did meet the needs of the landfill as far as hauling material. It's a really good truck. It's got a good motor, but it worked a little better for them than it did for us. So we no longer have a spare plow truck. We've got 6 full-time plow trucks. We've got 5 part-time. So we got 11 districts, so that way we're whole. But we have normally always had 1 or 2 spare trucks, and at this time we don't. So we took a look at a couple of different options. One option being with no money in the internal service fund to replace, going out and buying a spare truck. So anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 at a minimum, $1,000. Or the other option being maybe taking a look at our next truck that's ready for replacement and replacing that one a little early. This truck, being unit number 120, was purchased in 2008. It's a very good truck, and would make a nice addition to move that one into one of our 5 part-time districts, and then take one of those part-time trucks, and then that would be our spare. It sounds maybe a little odd to have a spare truck, but it's amazing how many times in the winter that you do have mechanical issues of any kind, whether it be overheating or sometimes they go in the ditch and you pull them out and you hurt something. It happens quite often, so it wouldn't actually be a bad idea to have more than one. But we do have one part-time motor grader as well, so we've got some coverage there in case we do need it. So the impacts by replacing this one a couple of years ahead of schedule is kind of laid out in, I don't know if everybody's got the little spreadsheet there. There's about $146,000 in this truck after the 2014 internal service fund allocation. A new plow truck, for one, they're not real easy to come by as far as timing or the quickness. I mean, they take a while to get the truck itself. There's probably maybe 3-4 months of out time just to get the cab and chassis. Then you have to send it to a truck building company, Burt's Truck Equipment in Moorhead, and there's a couple other ones that we've been using off the state bid, but it takes several months in their shop then too, as they construct the box, they put the hydraulics on there, they attach the snow equipment on there, so the whole package takes quite a while. There's a truck that's available. It's a demo model. It is still on the state bid, so it's a competitive Minnesota bid pricing, and it's about $211,740. So you can see we're about $65,000 short or so in internal service fund. So what we took a look at doing in order to make this kind of work with our internal service fund dollars is saying that unit 120 has a residual value of at least the $65,000 that we're short. The current allocation going into that Unit 120 is about $21,000 or so. So I know one thing we talked about on the Highway Tracking Committee meeting is what is this new impact going to be? Because every time we replace something, it does always kind of ratchet up our internal service fund, and I don't know any way, unless prices start staying flat, which they probably never will, but it is a little bit of a hike. It's about $16,000 a year more than it was the previous year, but so I guess that's the nuts and bolts of what we looked at doing there. I don't know if Kevin, if you want to comment a little bit about.
Yeah, so the internal service fund we'd have to increase for 2015, correct, Brian?
Yes, and Mr. Chair, that's what I'm just checking now. We have placed an additional $50,000 in the internal service fund. It's going from $600,000 to $650,000, which was a decision prior to this move.
Yeah, but that was based on a couple of other purchases that required an increase in the.
Yes, it was.
So it's not like we have that 50,000 to.
No, but what I'm saying, we've already included $50,000
Right.
more. So I don't know exactly how that would shake out, because I know we always run real close on that. We also had increased it $50,000 from 2012 to 2013, so we have increased it $100,000 from 2012.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this has gone through committee and okay to committee?
Yeah, we, when Dave and Nathan originally brought it to our committee, we reviewed it, and at that time, we just kind of had some incomplete data, and so we asked them to go back and get additional data. They brought it back to our last Highway Tracking Committee meeting, and we felt that this is doable to get this done. And it's like Dave said, we're operating here without a spare, and I'll tell you what, all we need to do is to have one of these machines break down, and we're going to hear from our public big time on it.
Thank you.
And the one thing that maybe we want to note too is, I think our committee did a nice job taking a look at the options. There was an option, and we brought some pictures in on a used plow truck, and we thought, all right, if we're going to spend a certain amount of dollars, 40 to 60,000, would we rather have a truck that's got 100,000 or 200,000 miles on it that's been kind of used by another county, or would we want to keep our existing truck and basically buy that for 65,000? And I think our committee felt it was better to, basically purchase a new one and keep our old one rather than purchase another used piece of equipment that potentially could cause more.
Well, we know what we're getting by keeping our own used one.
How many miles are on that when you're keeping?
There's about 68,000, I think 70,000.
All right.
Yeah, it's a good truck.
Good, yeah.
So there was a recommendation from our Highway Tracking Committee to approve this purchase.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve the purchase as recommended here.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, I just want to make a note that, we are paving out, or hopefully paving here later today. The contractor is out on 11th Street out here. He's doing all his milling. He's probably about 2/3 or so done. As I was coming here, I noticed they were running into some issues with some concrete down there. They're milling down the asphalt and they run into some concrete. So there's some small issues, but the plan is hopefully to be paving later today, if not real early tomorrow. So a couple of days of paving. Then we have a little bit of work with the manholes, cutting out and putting the concrete diamonds around the manholes. And the schedule is still, we're pushing hard to get done by very, very early next week.
All right. Thanks, Dave. I think we'll go in reverse order here with the committee reports, just in case there was anybody who wanted to come in here to listen to the budget discussion. So we'll start with Frank. Are you ready to give a report on your committees?
Yeah. Thursday, the FMCOG meeting, there was mostly, we went over the budget, the finance report, and the 2015 to 18 Transportation Improvement Program. And last night I was the Agassiz Recreation Trails meeting. There we're just sort of finalizing things, getting rid of the final bills and getting ready to turn everything over to well, whether it be a new committee or whatever, but the engineers from each county are going to be taking over the trail, so. That was it.
All right. Well, I should say welcome back, Wayne.
Thank you. Good to be here,
He's got a lot of
We're-
reporting to do.
We're glad to have you back, and I'm assuming you have an awful lot of reporting to do.
One. On Thursday, the 21st, Lake Agassiz Regional Library Executive Board meeting, and the main topic of discussion was, and passed by the Executive Committee, was to reduce the size of the board from 24 to 18. Clay County would lose 2, Moorhead would lose 2, and I believe Becker County would lose 2. I could be wrong on the last one, but, and that will now go before the full board and see what happens coming up. It will very likely pass. But the reason for that was most of it is population, 1 for 10,000, and that's the way we are planning to go. And just seems like some of these committees we talked about earlier, the more you have on a committee, sometimes the more difficult it is to get things accomplished. But the smaller the committee, the more efficient it is, and that's where that's going. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
So can I just follow up on that? I always get a little concerned when our weight of our votes get taken out when we're members of something. So this is population based, and then is there any criterion involved there with what
It's usually
how we fund it?
That's a good question, and I don't have the exact answer. I believe it is population-based regarding funding, but I'm not sure. It's looking at like 1 representative per 10,000 people. And
Well, Clay County has 60,000 people. Do we still have 6 people on the board then?
from Clay County,
Yeah. I don't know. How do you figure that to 1 per 10,000? That's
yes, it would be, well, just a minute. Clay County would have,
We'd be losing 4 Clay County people if 2.
well, you're talking Clay County and Moorhead?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd be losing 4 people.
Yes. But we would still, the population in Lake Agassiz is Moorhead and Clay County.
Oh, yeah.
And so we would still have plenty of representation. And that did come up in the discussion. Good question.
All right. John?
We had planning commission last Tuesday, and quite a controversial one with the, there's only one hearing, but it was a hearing concerning the concrete recycling out at Fitzgerald Pit, and we did grant them a permit to continue with a number of restrictions that I think will help. Some restrictions on the length of time each year that they can be crushing concrete and so on. And it's a very disturbing thing for the closest neighbors there. As we remember, one person was in here and talked to us a while back, and so they were the neighbors were disappointed, but the fact that we granted another permit to them. But I think it was the need for the county is significant for that facility, and the location is good for usage. It's not ideal for the neighbors, but I think the restrictions we put on it will help, and we should the requirements are such that they should reduce the noise level for the neighbors. On Wednesday there was a board meeting for the Historical and Cultural Society, and a number of issues pertaining to some of the properties that we own. One thing, you should all go out and take a look at the new signage has been put on the old Berquist cabin up here, just a couple blocks from the courthouse here, and very professional signing with explanation about who Berquist was and about the history of the house and so on. So it was just completed this week, and I think it is a great addition, and hopefully people will learn more about the location when they see that. There was an executive committee meeting last week with the Basin Commission on Thursday, and we spent most of the time going through budget for the 2015 year, and it was a successful and good meeting. They spent quite a bit of time at Potato Days in Barnesville, and a number of booths with county-related groups were there. So it was a good day. We really lucked out in the rain. It was forecasted to be 80% chance of rain and up to 3 inches of rain and all that stuff, and really nothing was rained out. Everything was went well. So it was a great event again, and lots of people. Yesterday, at Lakeland meeting, board meeting, this time it was in Moorhead, and so I got to see McCarthy again after his accident this summer and so on, and he's doing well. He says he's back 100%, so he was doing well. And that was it.
Okay, thanks, John.
I had yesterday public health emergency preparedness meeting, and that's a statewide committee I'm on to try and determine how the federal funds the state gets for emergency preparedness are distributed, and it's quite a ordeal. We presented something last spring at the SHAC meeting, which wasn't satisfactory to enough people involved, so we've been working on it again this summer and plan on representing in September at the SHAC meeting, and so we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it'll be acceptable at this next meeting. And then last week we had detention advisory committee meeting to talk about our becoming partnered with Cass County in terms of housing juveniles in our detention facility, and that went very well. I thought Kevin and Brian were both there, and we've got, we're partnered with 9 other counties in that, and we had a unanimous vote. Everybody had a lot, I thought, of thoughtful questions and issues we discussed, but at the end we had a 100% unanimous vote to support partnering with Cass County on this. So, and I think there's something coming out today. I think the sheriff in Cass County is having an announcement on that. So that was it for me.
Okay, I'll follow up to that. First off, I had a highway tracking meeting last week, and that primary issue was this deal on the vehicle. We kind of had him come back for a special meeting for that purpose. So that was primary for the truck. Grant talked about the Regional Juvenile Center, and this is we've been kind of working on this for a couple months now with Cass County, and there's some really good opportunities here, both from a revenue standpoint that can come in for Clay County, as well as improved services for the juveniles that currently go into the Cass County system. We met with those folks. They came over here and they said what our facility is exactly what they'd want to build. If and they were looking at being faced to take their kids out of that pod at the jail, because the jail, they need that pod space now for adults, and so it frees up another pod for the adults, and the alternative for them was to either build a place for their juveniles or to work out a deal to come here. And we worked with the interstate issues. Apparently have all been resolved, coming from Fargo to Moorhead and vice versa. So we called a special meeting of the regional members and gave them the details of what was going on. The fact that we'd be bringing in excess of $500,000 a year additional revenue. That would be offset somewhat. We'd have to add a little bit of staffing, to have that, but we would still end up seeing, hopefully, where every county would see down the road a reduction in the annual cost, the price per bed that they pay So we're really excited about it, and they're kind of committed to a long-term process here. I understand that on the Cass County side that they're having a press conference on that today. I think Sheriff Laney is going to be talking about how this whole process, and if we can come to a final agreement on this, how that will benefit Cass County as well in a significant way. So it was really exciting. Our members, like Grant said, they came up with a lot of questions, but in the end, they were all extremely supportive and actually excited to see this, and it really makes for a long-term stable situation for our regional juvenile center. So that's all I had. Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or then you can go into your report?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really nothing to the juvenile issue, although just echo what you two gentlemen just said. It's that really looking at it a win-win-win situation, even expanding to the 10 counties to include us is really favorable, and they were favorable about it. So that was nice to hear. And I think everybody has to remember, too, that 2/3 of that is secure and 1/3 is non-secure. The 1/3 that's non-secure is all Clay County. The other receives input from the other 9 counties. So that was a good thing. Highway and tracking has already been discussed. We also had a meeting on the write-off policy. So we met, your chair was in on that meeting, and Mr. Grant, were you in on
I
that one,
think you
too?
better clarify what you mean by write-off. That had to deal with the detox, right? A lot of it had to do with the detox. There was a few issues there on
Yeah, and how we
that came
handle it.
up here like a year ago, how we're going to go about writing off. And we're in that process of policy. And
Yeah, absolutely. And that'll be brought to the board later on, but I think we're making good headway in regards to how we look at those, as we talked earlier when we came before you, is that is an appropriation that is delegated, I'll say, to the detox center. We know that is a cost factor, although it accumulates debt, and we want to decide how we get rid of that, and I think it's going along really well. So that'll come to be for the board sometime probably later this year as we refine everything on it. So that's going really well. We met with a few agencies on their budgets, County Attorney's Office of Public Health on their budget, Veterans on their budget. Met with Commissioner Wayland and Councilman Hewlett on the Heartland Trail and the meeting that they are having now. I think it's Councilman Hewlett is appointed to that board as a commissioner on that LaSalle Sam's funding, isn't it, that they're going to be applying to?
Well, yeah, it's a Parks and Trails Commission that was set up last year, but it's to deal with the legacy money from the, right.
With the legislator, yeah. So he has been appointed to that committee, and so we met with them so that Clay County gets their application in. We asked Tim Magnuson to fill out that application. He got it to him by Friday. He was very pleased with the information, so that went along really well, I think. So.
Yeah, on that, I talked to Councilmember Hewlett yesterday about that, and he said that Tim did an excellent job. So
That's
he
good
was
to hear.
very happy with that. So
That's very good to hear. We did have a diversion administrative meeting last Thursday morning as well. I guess, the same issues keep coming up, and how you deal with them and things is always discussed. Everyone's aware of what is happening there a little bit in regards to the governor's office and his letter to Washington, D.C., and I'm sure that'll be discussed more in detail later on. So we had a central administration staff or managers meeting. Been on a couple of those meetings with the Juvenile Center, and Steve and I have talked a little bit about that. That's going extremely well, we think, has been talked about here. I attended a county city land management. They get together quarterly to talk about how they're handling assessments and how they're handling parceling and different things, and it was really good. They talk about the new parceling system that they're going to have through Manatron. They talk about the difficulties of now with Oakport coming in, of course, all of those parcels now shift to the city rather than the county. It can sound simple enough, but there's a lot of things that have to be taken in. Special assessments, how is that going to be viewed, if there's any issues in there, and the charging of it. So they have a lot of work to address there. And, of course, as usual, spent a little time on personnel issues. So we work a long way in that. I see Darren's not here. Attended new hire orientation. We have new hire orientation every so often, and that, I think, is really good for the employees. One thing that this board needs to do, and we'll bring in fact, it's got to happen kind of, hopefully next week, we'll put it on the agenda, and that is to appoint a commissioner to the Prairie Lakes Solid Waste Authority, because as of September 1, we will be a member of that organization, and we will have one representative appointed by you on that board. So I know you do have Kirk and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, that you have an advisory committee on Thursday morning, so hopefully we can put that on the agenda for next Tuesday, so that one of you, I'm assuming one of the commissioners that are on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, could attend that September meeting then. So that's what we had planned. So, Mr. Chair, if you can be thinking about that a little bit, and we'll have that on next week's agenda. Just the, I know we've kind of talked about it all the way along. It's been a little quiet right now, but the signage, the number registering out at DMV is in now, trying to tweak and make that work better so that people have a clear signal. It's been kind of a struggle and a learning process out there, but hopefully it's coming along. And then in regards to the budget, Lori advised me yesterday that the preliminary levy date has been changed to September 30th versus September 15th. So it'll give you plenty of time to add money back into the budget before isn't that what you wanted to do?
Or take it out.
So, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Let me remind you, you're still on probation.
No, I know.
I have one addition. I also was at the highway tracking last week. I forgot about that, so.
Okay, all right, so that's done, so we can move into our budget discussion then. Brian, Lori, you want to come up?
I have a copy of it, do that.
I did.
This,
Okay, this is just a pick. Do you want that?
well, later.
Okay, good morning, Lori.
Morning.
Brian, you going to kick this off for us, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair, you will. Well, you've got about 4 pieces of paper there this morning, and if we could kind of start out with the one that's dated, it's a memo dated August 19th, that's in front of you. There's one that's dated August 21st, and the one that we're going to look at first is the August 19th, because it's in response to a question from last meeting when, Mr. Chair, you asked about the total revenues for the general fund were $19,667,213, and the expenditures were $20,276,043. And you asked why the difference, and I said we would get you that. I did send out some information on that, but I thought since that was asked at the meeting last time, we should probably address that first, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And of the $608,000 that was expenditures over revenue, you can see that on that memo that you have in front of you, dated August 19th, if everybody located that one, the first item is $371,334. Of that was a market value adjustment for investments, and Lori can really knows the reason why on this, so if she certainly wants to add anything, but it's a paper adjustment. If you were to liquidate your bonds as of today, that would be the loss, and we're required to record that now, so.
Right, but we will hold these to maturity, so it's just a loss on paper, it's not an actual,
So will the loss be regained?
yes, eventually.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's,
Isn't there a date wrong here, though? You get the same date value as the difference between book value of our investments in 12/31/13 and market value of these investments in 12/31/13.
Well, we're valuing our
different things.
investments at the end of the year, so it's between our book value and the market value.
Oh,
As-
okay.
you're comparing the two at the same year end.
I got you, I see.
But the first time I read it, Commissioner Everett, I thought the same thing. We got the wrong basic, and then we looked at it a little closer and said there was two different items. So
Okay.
understand
Book
where you're
value,
at there.
market value.
So that speaks to, over half of it. The next item is just a delayed payment on the law enforcement center of almost $100,000, $96,788 from the city, reference the law enforcement expenses, so that counts for about another $100,000 of it. The next is $88,000 that was expenses over revenues received in 2013. Now, remember, we had two flood buyouts, and the most recent one, I think, was in 2011, when we agreed to buy about 30, I think it ended up to be 34 properties in a flood buyout that were reimbursed from DNR, but the county was going to chip in some funds. And anyway, our money had to be expended before we could collect that money from the state. So in 2013, we had $88,000 that we paid out versus collecting. Now, if you note in there, though, in 2014, we had $700,000 come in from the state. And it was only $88,000 different in 2013, but then 2012, we had paid out more that we hadn't collected on. So now we've received all of our monies from DNR, so things will kind of balance out on that. But we'll have, well, you could subtract the $88,000 out of that, it'd still be around $600,000 that came in revenue. And we also.
In 14,
In 24.
in 14, that really could have been attributed to 13.
Correct.
Yes. And then there's also, and this comes from Tim, approximately $60,000 that will be billed to the watershed, because remember, that was a joint venture that we went into in regards to our flood buyout. And then there's about $30,000 in payments from the state for MA and 4D and food stamps, that were not received by the 28th day of August. So that really covers the $608,000 between the expenditures and the revenue, the difference in the expenditure and revenues for that. There was a small amount, I think like $21,000, and Stacy asked me if she should go and research that, and I said not at this time, because not that it's insignificant, that's a lot of money, but it
Well,
might
that's
be a
just a
lot of little
combination
things.
of everything.
Yes.
Everything else.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to this, this is what we got last week, Lori, this report, and it showed our expenditures over revenues of $1.566 million for 2013 based on the final report.
Right.
However, had we, I just want to make sure I'm reading this right, and you can help me here. So this 371,000 is reported as in the books as lost income, basically.
Correct.
When in fact it's not.
Not technically.
Not technically, because it's going to come back.
Right.
So if that entry didn't technically have to be made, we would be, that 1.56 would drop by the 371.
Right.
Right, we'd be getting closer to.
That's a recent thing that we've just had to start doing.
Right.
We didn't used to have to recognize that market value loss.
Right. But to me, if you recognize that loss, and if you know it's going to be regained, why don't you have the ability to recognize a receivable and an offset to it? It's just kind of strange. But I'm not going to get into what government says we have to do. But so then the Moorhead City share, that's revenue that we would have gotten, but it's not been included yet.
Yeah, we've received it now, but it wasn't
It wasn't
received
for
by us in
13.
time to recognize it for 2016.
Okay, so that would also then reduce that 1.566.
Correct.
Follow me? Okay. Now, on this third item, the $700,000 in state revenue and the $60,000 from the watershed, those are numbers that also could have been or should have been included in 13, but we didn't have them in time, correct? So that would also then bring down that 1,566,000 negative. To the point where, you know, if I, now what's the 88,402, what's that, Brian? What?
Well, Mr. Chair, that was expenses that we had expended and had not collected for in 2013. In other words, that 700,000, technically, you should subtract the 88,000 from the 700. Had that 700 come in 2013, we would have subtracted that 88,000, and we would have netted out $612,000.
Okay, so the 612 plus the 60 would put us at 672.
Yes, that's fair.
All right. And then of course the 30. So your 7, you're looking at 800 and 3. It's almost 1.2 million between these items.
Right.
That would improve what we're showing there had everything occurred when it was supposed to in the proper year.
Right. It's
Correct,
all a
Lloyd?
timing issue.
It's all timing. And so that leads me to one other thing that's also timing, and that is this big monster over here in column number 2, Road and Bridge, where it shows our expenses over revenues of 1.9 million. Well, the fact of the matter is we haven't been able to recognize our revenue.
Correct.
So that's all coming in.
And that's partly the bond payments too. So
Right.
for a few years, we're going to be off a lot because we recognize that bond payment coming in long ago, but we have to recognize the expenses now, so.
Yeah. So, but in reality, they're offset with income.
Correct.
With the bond.
Road and Bridge is actually in better shape now than it's been in for a number of years.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I read this,
Gosh, I wonder who's going.
you know where I'm going, don't you? I'm trying to help our taxpayers. So I'm going with this is, at first blush when we look at this report, it says, well, we didn't collect enough money from our citizens in 2013 to cover our expenses, when in fact it was bookkeeping issues that caused us to be reported that way, when in fact when everything is all said and done and collected, again, we would have showed revenues over expenditures if everything was in the appropriate year.
Yes.
You can't,
Yeah.
it is what
And
it
it's
is.
not issues on our end, it's timing issues.
That's right, I'm just saying it, but the fact
just
of
wanna make sure everybody else knows
the
that.
matter is if we were the whole, just to be the gospel truth here,
We pretty much broke even,
yeah, well, as a matter of fact, I think we came out better than even,
yeah, a little bit.
to the tune of about $600,000 or $700,000.
Overall.
Overall.
But that includes solid waste and.
Yeah,
and
or
some of
maybe
the
even a
other
million, and
enterprise
solid
costs.
waste, and I agree, solid waste, we shouldn't touch a lot. But my point being, and when I talked to Brian about this, is that with some of that going on, I see no reason why we should not still be able to take a portion of that and apply it to help.
Well, just
Knock
keep
this
in mind
down.
that 840,000 of
This-
that was solid
this-
waste,
I
which is,
understand.
which is not tax levy dollars.
Right. But we do get some money from solid waste, but that's it,
The
already built in,
100,000.
yeah. So anyway, that's the case I was trying to make, so you can
Very good
continue
case.
on now.
Okay, continue. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And then, what we talked about last time, before going to the second memo that you have in front of you, if you want to pick up that new request, the 2015 new request form, it looks like this, that I handed out to you. There you go. We've talked about this now several times because, it started out as you can see down there, $331,000, and that was without the additional $50,000 for the jail was not included in that total. And now what we have done is we've kind of worked through this, and Brian Melton, our county attorney, was possibly going to come in today during this because we met with him. The only two items that are left in the new request for your consideration, if you have looked at the summary sheet, you'll notice that there's new requests are $92,680. And if you look at that new request document here now, the only two items that are left in the new request, and certainly looking for your input if you agree with this or not, but the technology services, we did leave $10,000, but we moved that into the regular budget because it was just a general increase in their capital service. The same with the information services of $10,000. Remember, you approved that last year when Mark came in and talked about going to the new website, and that incurred those costs then. So Lori and I, after meeting with him, said, that's not a new request, that's something that's been approved by the board, so it's an ongoing. So that is in the budget, but the only two items of new requests are left in this are the county attorney was asking for a full-time additional attorney, and after we met with him, he felt that maybe a reasonable request to the board would be to start that person mid-year. If you guys would consider a full-time position starting mid-year, that would cut his request in half to $42,680. The purchase of the copier, he had put $12,868 in a new request for a new copier. When Lori and I met with him, he had not claimed $20,000 for revenue in seized assets. We feel we didn't put any revenues in for the seized assets, but we feel that we're going to check it out and make sure that it's correct. But it would be revenue coming in that could be used to purchase this copier. So we did not include the revenue, and we don't feel that we should include the copier at this time either. So that's kind of what we, and then there was a few other adjustments that we made. I know we made an adjustment of $16,000 down to $12,000 in an area as well. But there was a few minor adjustments that we don't go into all of the details on that. So anyway, what's left in his is a request of $42,680, and that is employing a full-time attorney halfway through the year. Of course, then that will create an obligation going into 2016 that you will add that other half-time position because it'll be authorized already. So the others have been eliminated, and then the only other one is the $50,000 increase, as we have talked about over the years, of adding $50,000 there a year for 6 years. So that's your new request left that for your consideration. Right? And so then, if you want to go to the next memo, is dated August 21st. That will kind of then correspond to the summary sheet that you have in regards to the levies and some of the things that we have done at your direction after our last discussion last week. So, and you also have a whole new copy of the budget too, and you can see where everybody's budget's at, what the percentage increases are if you go through that part of it. But here is what you had suggested last week. So, and it's reflected on the summary sheet, that we remove the $25,000 unanticipated fund. That would zero out that unanticipated account, and you would rely on reserves if you choose to fund something during the year that's not budgeted for. We will have to do a update of our comprehensive plan. Tim was working with Wade at MetroCog, and we were looking at sharing the expenses of that maybe in 2 or 3 years to work on that. But we put $25,000 in the budget so that we could start building a reserve so that we'd pay for that. It was talked about last week that we would just pay for that out of reserves in 2 or 3 years if that comprehensive plan update went forward. Also, the housing rebate plan, Lori had put $150,000 in the budget for that because those are payments we will have to make. We will have to account for that expense. But We felt that that was a short-term issue. We don't know how much it goes out exactly each year, but it's a short-term investment in a long-term gain, and you're willing to look at that for reserves. So we took that out of the budget as well. It was talked about the FM study monies, that there's been no request for monies there, and so we will deal with that when it comes in with reserves. So we're identifying approximately, I think it's $100,000 or $300,000 there, that in future years that could come out of reserves in those obligations. And then there was an increase in, well, I shouldn't say an increase, we added revenue of $112,941. That was revenues over expenditures for 2013 in public health. We discussed that with public health. They're certainly supportive of that. And then I'll say we got lucky. Our premium for MCIT contribution, I call it a premium, it's a contribution because it's not an insurance company, it's an association, so to speak. We did lower our deductibles, which you were well aware of, on property damage. We lowered from 1,000 to 25, or increased from 1,000 to 2,500, which probably helped our premiums somewhat. But our workers' comp was reduced. Premium was reduced by 100,000, which really helped going into 2015. So that was an added revenue. I'll say it was a reduction in expense. So that is all reflected in your summary of 2015 now. And you can see that the spread levy is at 5.44, and with the new construction, and Lori and I had a fair amount of conversation about that new construction, and we feel that is something that is a real figure there, because you've had that much growth to spread your tax base over. So for the individual taxpayer that has a $150,000 home, their levy is not going to go up by 5.4%. It's closer to reflected to the 4.04, which is the net levy that we're showing at this time. We're
Making
progress.
We have till September 30th to adjust that.
Yes, we do.
Yep.
Yes, we do.
All right, well, that's certainly, it's encouraging to see that number. We've gone now on a net from where we were here on, whenever this, 818 to 821. We've gone from 6.08 net to 4.04, so we're certainly going in the right direction. John?
The statement that you, under tax levy, under new request, is an increase in cafeteria plan of 50% to get to $3.99. I mean, there's no figure in there. Is that's included in what? Where is it?
That's included in our health care
In the health care
increase of $468,000.
Do we have, by the way, did we have the rebate, the insurance rebate built into our revenue?
We've already included that in.
That's in the revenues, okay.
And that's a very good point, Mr. Chair. If you look at, and Commissioner Everett, if you look at all of the percentage over in the right side, and that general revenue fund is showing 5.21% increase, and someone could ask, well, why is that going up so high? You just answered it by a big chunk. That 468, been saying 460, 468,000 is included in that for all funds. Lori will break that down once they get the budget set. So that percentage will come down. So what you will have probably in there is the highest percentage increase of any of them will be the library at 5%. And I looked at that too. I think our contribution being requested is $262,000, and we just received from the state our maintenance of effort, or minimum maintenance of effort, I'll say, is $196,000. I'm not saying you want to change that, but I think I need to provide that to you for your information. That is there it is, $262,610 that's being requested. And
One thing we haven't looked at yet is the outside organizations and so on. Is that flat? Is that what we're predicting at this point?
You know, yes, we have, I guess. We have looked at that. In fact, I did contact Kevin Kassenbach from Soil and Water, for example, and I said that I was aware that your insurance increase was 0, where ours was a 13% increase, and asked him to take a look at their budget for any reconsiderations. But we did go through the percentages, and I know last year there was quite a high percentage in, for example, Lakes and Prairies was requested for but that was a 3% increase this year. So all of the increases in the Land of the Dancing Skies, all of those are 2 and 3% increases that
Okay.
are in that range. So there's really, the library is probably the highest one that's an outside agency that is requesting that much of an increase, so.
Mr. Chair, just came in as you noticed. You just mentioned the library. How much are they requesting?
$275,740.
Over and above last year?
No. That is their entire request.
13,000 more.
Yes, 13,000 more.
What percentage is that?
5%.
Oh, interesting. In our meeting the other night, Liz Lynch mentioned 2%.
Oh.
But, okay, thank you.
Are you suggesting that we go with 2?
I'm suggesting that you go with what they're asking, but I just wanted to get that clarified.
Yeah, wasn't aware of that, so. But that was the one that we were looking at a little bit because of just what Commissioner Everett said, what are all of the other outside entities that are looking to the county for funds? Example, soil and water was a 3% increase, which, if we're gonna be within that, our departments are 3 to 4. If you look at their healthcare needs and different things. We've had a couple losses of revenues, or as you notice on here, the county program aid went down $30,000, which was kind of a surprise to us. We thought that would be at the same or even higher. But that's a formula, and we have awfully good employment numbers here, and so that figures into it. The poverty level figures into it, and all those kinds of things. Make some adjustments on that. So sometimes that's good news for it, but we don't like.
Lori, is that fixed now? That number is fixed, or is that still a moving target?
The county program aid?
Yeah.
It's based on a formula, so they take all different things into consideration to get that number, so it moves some. But we anticipated that it would increase, and it actually decreased.
So by the time December rolls around, it will
Oh,
move
no,
more?
that'll stay the same
So
for
it is
this
now.
year, yeah.
Okay, so this is the number.
Correct, yeah.
All right, well, any other questions for the budget discussion? Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Lori. We'll keep plugging away at this, and I guess I'd like to see us try to set this by the 23rd as opposed to is it 30th a Tuesday? Twenty-third. So I think to be on the safe side, it would be good for us to try to finalize our preliminary levy on the 23rd then. If that, hopefully we can have us all here and get that done.
Well, and there's probably a couple little more tweaks that we will want to do to go through it again. We printed a new one, and we'll go through and see if there's any additional things that we've missed. Although I think we've been pretty thorough on it, at least that's the way I feel right now. But
Yeah.
can't say that we can't come up with something else. And let's hope there aren't any things that jump up to us that to add things. Let's hope it's a reduction. So, thank you,
Very
Mr.
good.
Chair.
Thank you. All right, that kind of wraps up everything we had on our agenda. Jen, you have anything for us today?
No.
Vicki, anything? All right. Okay, with that, we will be adjourned.